Hey, what's up, everybody? It is Uncle Mad here live for our usual Friday night live stream. Lot to talk about. It's getting to be a busy time of the year for the things that are specifically interesting to me. We've got Titans game this weekend. We've got Nashville SC game this weekend. We've got Manchester United this weekend. We've got maybe the best slate of college football we might have all season coming up this season. We've got heat of the race for the playoffs for baseball. I'm watching the Braves and the Nationals right now. It is pouring down rain as the Braves try to close this game out. I think the umps will probably let this one go. The Braves are up 9-6 right now. I'll start out with a funny story about this game. So when I bet gambling stuff, we talk gambling stuff here on the channel sometimes. I tend to not make very many bets that are just me purely betting my own ideas, my own thoughts, because I don't trust my own thoughts. I don't trust my own brain. I try to find people in the gambling space that I think are smarter than me, that I think have good opinions, that I kind of align with, at least to the point where, like, when they say something, I kind of go, yeah, that makes sense. That's almost what I was thinking too. And then I tail those people's bets. So if I give out bets, it's 90% of the time somebody else's bets that I'm tailing. Two big guys that I follow, like the main guys that I bet almost everything they put out there. Matt Peralt, he does the Daily Juice podcast, and Alan Bell, who's part of the Early Edge, the whole CBS Sports HQ team. Rafael Iglesias has given up a couple of hits here. 2 on, 1 out. Braves up 9-6. Live commentary. That's what you come here for. Alan Bell, he's been riding the Braves train through this hot streak. They've been on the second half of the season. He put out 3 single-game parlays that he recommended everybody follow tonight. It was Ronald Acuna, 1+ hit, Braves team total over 4.5. Austin Riley, 1+ hit, Braves team total over 4.5. Matt Olson, 1+ hit, Braves team total over 4.5. 3 separate bets, all basically the same, parlay, team total, and the player to get a hit. I fat-fingered an over bet on the Ronald Acuna bet, and I was like, this sucks. Couldn't find the option to cash it out. I was like, well, these have been almost guaranteed money for the most part, so hope for the best. Acuna, first at-bat, first inning home run. Austin Riley, his first at-bat, first inning home run. Braves are 3 runs in the first inning. They're now up 9-6, so those 2 have cashed. Matt Olson hasn't got a hit in this game. He's next at bat. If somehow the Nationals tie this up and we go to extra innings, he would be next up. But I kind of would rather the Braves just win the game as a Braves fan, so that's a little bit of a weird spot to be in. But, yeah, a lot going on, a busy weekend, a lot to talk about. I'm going to start, now that we've gotten through the Braves stuff, I figured talk about the Nashville SC stuff, because I think the football stuff will go better together if we just kind of jam all that together at the end. Really good result for Nashville SC Wednesday at Sporting KC. It's a team we've had an up-and-down record against. We were, I think, only 1-2 against them coming into the match in our MLS tenure, which is not a great track record because they've been one of the worst teams in MLS since we've joined the league. So to only be 1-2 against them was not great. But went out there, got a pretty solid result, kind of dominated the match, looked like the stuff we needed from Nashville SC. Zimmerman came back. Surge got a few minutes off the bench. We're looking like we're getting fit. We're looking like we're getting back up to full speed. Going to San Jose tomorrow night, late night kickoff, 9:30 kickoff. I think the team did the right thing. They flew to KC midweek, flew from there to the West Coast, has been staying on the West Coast to make sure they're adjusted to the time, make sure it's not like a crazy, same day, 24-hour trip all the way out to the West Coast. So it shouldn't be, the travel aspect of it shouldn't be that bad for the teams. They've had time to be out there and acclimate. You would think so. San Jose, though, is like another team that's been bad for most of our tenure, but has been kind of okay in the last couple of weeks. They've got dangerous players. Aboisie, I totally mispronounced that. Great, really good striker. Dude, I would have loved to see him come to Nashville SC at some point in time, but it's going to be a tough matchup, 2 games in a short period of time after having such a long layoff, But Hani Mukhtar looked like he was back to his best. Zimmerman, once again, got a few minutes, got his legs underneath him a little bit there. Surge got a few minutes to get his legs underneath him too. So we're looking fit. We're looking like we might be back to our best. There's some weird scenarios that could play off where we could actually clinch playoffs with a million different things happening, but you never know what's going to happen there. I think we need to take care of what we need to take care of. 3 points would be huge. We've got a really tough slate. This is the last, on paper, what you would consider an easier matchup, and that's the final out. The Braves win the game 9-6. 2 of my parlays cash that I followed Alan Bell on. Follow Alan Bell on Twitter. I'll take that, especially because the one at Fat Finger, the Acuna one, was the one I needed to cash the most, so we're good on that one. But yeah, big 3 points would be huge tomorrow for Nashville SC, just because it is the last game on our schedule that's like on paper easy. Red Bull, to most people, they've not been good this season. You look at that game, you'd say, oh, it's Red Bull, New York. They're not a good team this season. You should be able to handle that one. But Nashville SC has never beat Red Bull New York. Their style of play, their system has just never matched up well against us. When they've been at their best, they beat the crap out of us. When they've been at their worst, they've still beat us. So, we've got Seattle coming to here. We've got Orlando. We've got Philadelphia. We've got Red Bull. It's a tough run in. Like, we need to get these 3 points tomorrow against San Jose. Give ourselves that last little bit of breathing room we really need to feel like safe to get into the playoffs and just get some momentum going. Because that's ultimately that's one of the things that's so different about MLS compared to like European soccer is really doesn't matter. It's nice to win the Supporter Shield. That's a great accomplishment, but it's the same as all other American sports. If you get hot at the right time, if you're really going good at the end of the season and carry that momentum in the playoffs, that's what you really need. So we're coming off a little bit of a lull, but if we can get going right here in this last little run up into the playoffs, that would be huge for us. So it'll be a tough game. Anytime you go completely from one coast to the other, it's going to be tough. But like I said, I think traveling in advance will be a good advantage for Nashville SC. I think they'll be able to benefit from getting over there early. It's a game we should win. Like, if we really want to challenge for anything this season, if we want to push forward, if we want to have, our goals, the struggles, the up and down season, I don't know that we can really go all the way to MLS Cup final. But I mean, if we want to push on, we want to be able to continue this season if we want to consider the season a success, this is the type of game you should win. So I'm going to predict Nashville SC win against San Jose. 3-1 Nashville SC. That might be way too optimistic. I don't know. Let's get into some American football here. I want to start with college football. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but this is like a huge weekend. Some really great matchups. We start out right at the gate tomorrow morning. Florida State Clemson. That's going to be an awesome game. I got a couple futures on Florida State just because I thought they were going to have like a big year and Clemson was going to be down. It's going to be a good opportunity for Clemson to just shove it all in my face and kind of ruin everything. Kind of going through the slate, seeing what all I've got some bets on, just to kind of go through that part of it. Notre Dame, Ohio State, obviously, probably the marquee matchup of the game of the day. Probably the thing, most, people like me who's a Vandy fan and doesn't have that much to root for when it comes to college football. We got our marquee matchup against Kentucky tomorrow, but it's just weird. That used to be like towards the end of the season for us. So we always played like Kentucky, then UT. I felt like towards the end of the season, but whatever, doesn't matter. Probably going to lose. It'll be fine. We'll move on. We don't treat things the way other like college teams treat things, where it's like, you suck, you should fire your coach. Clark Leal's going to coach at Vandy for like 7 more years before he'll even be on the hot seat. Side tangent there. But yeah, Notre Dame, Ohio State, definitely the marquee game on what's a big day for games. Here's just some bets I've got that I want to go through. And once again, these are 99.9% bets that I'm tailing either Alan Bell, Matt Peralta, or just some other people that I follow for bets. I don't know that any of these are actually like any bets that I placed of my own volition, but I trust those people, so I expect these to be good bets. So I've got Notre Dame money line, which just sprinkled just a tiny little bit on that, because if you're going to bet the underdog on the spread, you're always been told to bet sprinkle on the money line too. So I also have Notre Dame +3. Apologies to my good friend Lance, who's a big Irish fan, Notre Dame fan. I probably have screwed your team by betting on them. Louisville plays Boston College. I've got Louisville -13.5. That one, I'm not crazy about that one, but I'm a rider, so I got to ride with that. Boston College gave Florida State a tough matchup last week. Louisville, I don't know that they're that great, but I'm a rider, so we're going to ride. Liberty FIU over 53.5. Those small schools like that just seem to always just put up like 40 points each, so that seems to make sense to me. This is one, I don't know where I found this one. This is definitely not a bet I made, but I've got Cincinnati +14.5 against Oklahoma. Just looking at my bets, I wish I remembered why I saw that, why I made that bet, because that one just seems like, I don't know, Cincinnati, like, going to hang with Oklahoma. I don't know. I haven't seen either of those teams this year. I mean, Oklahoma is usually a really good team. Cincinnati's been like kind of that knocking on the door team outside of the Power 5 for the last few years. Tennessee first quarter total for the game against UTSA over 13.5. This was like an instant cash bet like all last season. Like Tennessee games between them and whoever because they play such high tempo offense and because their opponents, could sometimes score because they don't play that much defense. It was almost always guaranteed you're getting at least 14 points in the first quarter of every Tennessee game. Hasn't been the case this season. Tennessee's offense has been kind of slow, and Joe Milton seems to overshoot every throw he makes. But UTSA is going to be a weaker opponent. We'll see. 13.5 team, not team total. That's total for the half. So UTSA can even contribute to that. TCU minus 6.5 over SMU. Notre Dame plus 3, as mentioned earlier. Only bet I've got on like the other kind of like marquee games. This is a game that never would have been a marquee game until the Deion effect came into play. And I'm a huge proponent of Deion Sanders. I think what he's doing for college football is awesome. Just bringing some spice, bringing some entertainment to it. I've got under 71.5. I think that total's way too high because I don't think Colorado is going to be able to score as much against Oregon as they have been against some of the teams they've played so far. Like they only scored had to go to overtime to get like 30 points against a kind of weak Colorado State team. I see this being like a 42-21 game, so we hit 63 there, and I've heard other people say kind of the same thing. So under 71.5 for Oregon, Colorado. And the only other bet I've got is Mississippi, Ole Miss, Alabama under 56, just because Alabama can't score. Ole Miss doesn't seem to have like the high-powered Lane Kiffin offense they usually do. 28-17 type game, 28-20. Yeah, pretty clean slate there. Yeah, Richard said, I made some nice money betting that last Nashville SC game. That's a one bad thing about having a team like Nashville SC. Like I have such a hard time betting my teams, where it's Nashville SC, whether it's the Titans. I have a rough time ever placing bets on my own team, just because I feel like you're just like lose. Like if your bet loses, your team loses. It's just like such a double whammy, and I feel like I'm always I never feel like I see my teams as clearly as I see other teams. Like last week, I predicted the Titans would lose to the Chargers 35-20. We win 27-24 or whatever it was. It's like, which I think the game played out the way I thought it would. I just underestimated. I was like basing that on like Tannehill still not being very good, but Tannehill was kind of great in the last game. Also, canceled my Colorado plus 21. I don't like that game. Yeah, it's going to be interesting because obviously Travis Hunter's out. That one's going to be a big question mark there. Like, what does that do to Colorado? I kind of go back and forth on that because I think Oregon's going to win the game comfortably, but 20 is a lot of points for going against Colorado, who's been able to score pretty easily on most teams. They put up points. I don't know. It's going to be an interesting game. I'll definitely watch it. I'll definitely be following it closely, so we'll see what happens there. But it's going to be an interesting game. It's a great slate. I work my real job that I do. I work Saturday mornings every week. Usually I'm done around 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. So I catch the late stuff. But I mean, tomorrow would be just absolutely one of the perfect days ever to just be able to wake up, plop down on the couch, turn on the college football, and just let it ride all day long. Just go nowhere, do nothing, just let all the college football play out in front of you. But I'll be out and about doing some work stuff throughout the early morning, but I'll catch up around 1-ish. I think the first thing I'm going to do tomorrow, as we kind of a transition to something else I want to talk about, is should be able to get out because here, Nashville local time, Manchester United Burnley will kick off at 2 o'clock. So I'm thinking I'm going to go to our local little pub that the Manchester United local fans gather at to watch the match. Lost Patty. I've done a few videos there. Go check those out if you feel inclined to on the channel. I'll probably go there, 2 o'clock kickoff for United versus Burnley. We don't get many of those here stateside where we get that kind of nice mid-afternoon kickoff. I'll probably go over there, watch the match with the other fans, commiserate. It's going to be really tough. Burnley's going to be a team that's going to make it difficult. They've been one of the worst teams in the league so far, but it haven't been much better. I mean, we got some goals going, we got some scoring going. Onana seems like he's trying to fight his way through the bad performances. He's taking accountability, which is great. I mean, especially when we got one player who's been completely accessed from the team from not taking accountability for his own actions. It's nice to see players do that, to actually step up and say, because you see that so much in modern sports where players just the coach is just picking on me because I didn't play well. It's no, for Onana to come out and say, I want to talk, I want to acknowledge this. Shout out Justin Fields. I'll talk about Justin Fields later. He did the same kind of thing. But you would think this would be a perfect get-right spot for United. Burnley, who's probably been worst or second worst team in the league so far. But I mean, maybe getting Mason Mount back, maybe getting Varane back from injury, maybe having Arabat available for his first appearance. But there's so much that needs to be fixed about United. I don't even know if you can get right in just one game, but I would think it's a game United can win. Hope they can win. Be cheering them on as always, of course, but we'll see what happens. But it should be fun to be able to watch that game at like 2, go out and see the rest of the Nashville SC stuff for the rest of the, go into the, college football for the rest of the day. Nashville SC late night kickoff, MLS after dark. Nashville SC is going to be like a 9:30 kickoff here local time. Should be a lot of fun tomorrow. Should be a lot of fun sports watching tomorrow. Richard says, what do you think FSU -2.5 against Clemson? So I have a future bet on FSU to win the ACC. I have a future bet on FSU to make the college football playoff because my thought process was this is the best FSU team we've seen in a long time. The rest of the ACC is mostly down. I mean, I think Clemson, especially because Dabo, is rejecting the NIL era, is rejecting the kind of transfer portal era. Could be a big disaster year for them. It has looked that way so far. FSU losing or struggling last week concerns me a little bit. This is going to be their toughest test for sure, though. I've been on them before the season, so I have to stay with them for the season. So if I was going to play, I don't think I'm going to place a bet on that game because I think I've already got enough tied up in Florida State on the overall season to not need to bet that game. And plus, I also tend to, another little thing I try to do with betting is unless I feel really good about a game, I don't want to bet it unless I'm going to watch it. I don't have a good enough feeling about Florida State 2.5. And I also feel like this is going to be a big game towards the future bets I have on Florida State. And I'm not going to be able to watch the game because I'll be working. So if I was going to sit down and watch the game, I'd probably put a little extra on Florida State -2.5 just to give me a little extra spice while I'm watching it. But since I'm not going to be able to watch the game, I'll probably just let the advanced stuff I have on Florida State ride and hope for the best with that. But I would lean Florida State -2.5 in that regard on that one. But like I said, across the board, if you could just sit down from the start of the day and just start rolling into those games, it's going to be a fun day to watch some sports tomorrow. And with that, let's talk about Sunday. I've got Titans at the Browns. Good game. Weird game. Horrible game for Cleveland. That's just I kind of hate the spot for the Titans because everything is definitely leaning. Things should be moving in the Titans' direction. You got Nick Chubb, devastating, horrible injury. I managed to successfully avoid seeing the injury, any of the replays of it. I was watching the game live, and I've never seen anything like it. It was the most crazy thing I've ever seen on a live broadcast where Nick Chubb's down, and he's just kind of holding his leg, and he's and you don't see it going sideways or any the usual gross stuff you see with those type of injuries, but he's just kind of holding his leg, and it's at first I was maybe it's a little ACL because he's kind of holding it weird, or maybe he just whatever. And they go to Joe Buck and Troy Aikman because initially on the initial play, it was in kind of the midst of the pile in the middle, so you couldn't really see it clear. And then all of a sudden out of nowhere, Joe Buck's oh man, we are not going to show the replay of that. We are just, that is horrible for Nick Chubb. And then you hear in the background all of the Steelers fans in the stadium go, oh, gasp, because they had showed the replay in the stadium. And I was I do not need to see this. I hate those type of things. That nothing gives me the ick more than seeing those injuries where a dude's leg goes the wrong way or something like that. Going back to Sid Vicious when his leg just snapped when he tried to do a pump kick off the top rope against Scott Snyder. That's one of the first ones I can remember where I was just ever since I'm just my wife, the beautiful Jessica that's often on the channel, when she's particularly mad at me, she'll send me videos of dude's legs just snapping just to piss me off and to make me grossed out because she's mad at me sometimes. So that's one of my worst things ever. I've managed to successfully, knock on wood, avoid seeing the replay of the Nick Chubb injury, but it's one of those things where he's out. Deshaun Watson has been terrible. I saw statistically, over the last 2 seasons, he's statistically the worst quarterback in the NFL, which is hard to imagine, but it's true. But when that much stuff is going wrong for a team, you almost got to steer the other way. You almost got to be okay, it can only go so bad. Is it going to keep going so bad? It's going to keep going so bad. especially when it comes to the Titans, because it seems like anytime everything's seems to favor us, that's when we do our worst. So like this feels like a game we should be able to go in and win. We're coming off a good game. We played pretty solidly. We got everything, kind of clicking in the last game, but I don't like it. Like I kind of said the same thing about with when Austin Eckler was going to be out for the Chargers. I'd almost rather Nick Chubb play, because if a team feels like they have to at least try to run the ball on us, that's to our favor because we have a really good run defense. But if they're just going to be like, our best running back's out, let's just throw it all over the field the whole game, that's worse for the Titans to me. I think the biggest challenge for the Titans and where the game is going to be won or loss is, can they do anything to slow down Myles Garrett and the Browns defense? Because, I mean, Myles Garrett, see what Bosa did last week. We saw what, guys I don't even know what their names were for the Saints did week 2. Like, the offensive line is still a huge problem for the Titans, particularly the left side, particularly Andre Dillard, where Myles Garrett is going to definitely be lining up and trying to come from. So, I mean, if Myles Garrett just cooks us all day long, that's going to be a problem. So the question is, like, what do they do? Do we try to run the ball heavy, which their defense is still going to be pretty solid against that, to try to just keep it out of Tannehill's hand to protect him? Do we do quick passes to get the ball out of his hand faster? I don't know. Got to have some kind of solution to negate Myles Garrett from getting 50 sacks in the game. That's the biggest key to the game for me, is just finding a way to not let Myles Garrett just destroy the Titans, because he definitely has the potential to do so. Seems like it's going to be a grind-out, low-scoring game one way or the other. I mean, like, I don't see the Browns' offense being able to score that much, but, I mean, the way their defense is going to be, I don't see us being able to score that much. Like, I could see this being like a 17-14 game either way. I think it'll be very similar to the Saints game, where it's going to be a grind. It's going to be a tough game. Tough to say. Two questions I want to highlight real quick. Do you enjoy Chipotle? And thoughts on Shake Shack versus Five Guys debate. So, I do like Chipotle. Chipotle is one of those places I'd probably go more often, but for whatever reason, just like I don't eat lunch that often. Like with the way my schedule usually works, I'd usually just bypass lunch and just like don't eat till dinner time most of the time. But Chipotle is like would be like one of my go-to spots for lunch if I was going the days I do get lunch. But like also the Chipotle is nearest to me is not a place I drive by that often. It's like usually if I'm going to get lunch, it's dictated by where I am when I decide I want to eat lunch. And I rarely ever come by a Chipotle, but I do like Chipotle. I like the setup of it. Like I used to work where they had one of the Chipotles where you could put the mobile order in, that a drive-through window, you could just pick it up and go. I used to get a lot of lunch there, but I don't work close to that one anymore. But I did like that one at the time. In terms of Shake Shack versus Five Guys, I've never had Shake Shack. I like Five Guys, way too expensive. That's the biggest problem for me with Five Guys. It's like you can easily suddenly like put in what you think is like a normal order at Five Guys, and suddenly you're like, I just spent $40. What just happened? They opened the Shake Shack in Green Hills here in the Nashville, Tennessee area about like 3-4 years ago. My wife's from New York, where Shake Shack kind of popped off originally there up there, and she's like, "We got to go to Shake Shack. We got to go to Shake Shack. We got to go to Shake Shack." I was like, "It just opened. It's going to be a line around the block. We shouldn't go." She's like, "We got to go. We got to go." And I hate going to Green Hills. Green Hills, if you're not familiar with like the Nashville area, it's like one of the worst traffic areas in Nashville. So I was like, "All right, fine. We'll go to Shake Shack. We'll go to Shake Shack, but it's going to be huge lines. It's going to be terrible traffic. Let's go." We go, line around the block. We get there. Just immediately says, "Okay, let's not get Shake Shack. Let's go somewhere else." I was like, "I knew it." So still to this day, I have not had Shake Shack. So by default, I go Five Guys, but Five Guys is way too expensive. Good food, love the fries, love the burgers, too expensive for what it is. But yeah, just to wrap up the Titans, Browns stuff, I think it's going to be a grind-out game. Under is probably a safe bet in this game. I don't know what it is, but if it's anything below like 38, I'd feel pretty comfortable with that, because like if either team scores 20, I don't think the other team is going to. I think 2014 might be the highest possible score, 2017, something like that. It's like the Titans like crazily have not scored over 30 points in something like, I think it's since like 2021. The Titans have not scored over 30 points in a game, which is absolutely insane in the modern NFL, where like teams are just like throwing all over the place, racking up points, to have just gone basically almost two full seasons without scoring 30 points is pretty insane. It's one of those games I don't feel comfortable making a pick. I think the Titans should win. Like I said, everything is breaking in the Titans' favor for this game. But I mean, and a lot of what I said, Larry just jumped over up on the top of the couch over there. It's off camera. You can't see it. But a lot of what I was, thought about the Browns preseason, that just Watson, like the odds of him, like just suddenly turning back into the old Watson didn't seem really good to me. And it seems like to not have happened so far. It seems he's been still terrible this season. But like I said, just as a Titans fan, my mind always goes to whenever things are going the best for us, it seems like that's when the worst things happen. So it's like everything's on paper. Nick Chubb out. Deshaun Watson's been terrible all season. Titans had a good get-right game last week. Tells me this is probably a Titans loss. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But just to kind of wrap up with the rest of the stream, I did want to do what we've been doing recently, kind of go through the full NFL slate, give my picks and thoughts for each game. I did this week. I went back. I saved my picks from last week just so we could go back through and see how I did. And I actually did okay. I think I was overall, for the picks I made last week, I was 9-5-1. And I didn't bet all these games. They're just like I gave out what I would have bet if I was going to bet all these games. Just 9-5-1. I mean, like I think like most gamblers, most people in sports betting are shooting for 60 to 65%, and that's pretty close. So I mean, like I can't fault myself there. And I think even some of the ones I missed were ones where like just my bias was off, or I had it right and just went the other way. So going through the games last week, I said Chargers -2.5 because I thought they were going to kill the Titans. But I said if the Titans played the way they against the Saints, they get killed. If they don't, it'd be close. They didn't play the way against the Saints. It was close. Titans won. Chiefs 3.5, won that one. Seahawks +4.5. I was right on that one. Larry, don't tear up stuff. Stop it, Larry. Larry. No. Bad Larry. Preview Saturday, Larry being bad. Raiders +8.5. This is when I said because the Bills had looked so bad, I needed to see them have a good game before I could trust them again. They had a good game. They killed the Raiders. Packers +1.5. Got that one right again. Barely, because the Falcons only won by 1 point. I think I had my thought process on that one was wrong. But anyway, right. I think the Falcons, and I'll talk about probably this a little bit when I get to their game this week, they're sneaky like Titans light. And it's an easy comparison to make because obviously Arthur Smith, our former offensive coordinator, is there now, so makes sense. But I think they're Titans light, where they're like not a good team, but they're going to be in most games unless they're just completely outmatched by a better team. And some games they'll grind out and win, like they did against the Packers. Some games they'll grind out and lose with stupid mistakes. Like we'll see. Ravens +3, got that one right. Buccaneers -2.5. I mean, Bucks are one of my hot takes that I'm just going to keep riding until it dies, is that I think the Bucs are going to be good because I think Baker's better than what we thought he was. Colts +1. That one just seems stupid. Like, why were the Colts an underdog to the Texans? The Texans might be one of the worst teams in the league. 49ers -7.5. Missed that by a half point, I think. I think they ended up winning the game by 7 or something like that. And that was the crazy one where McVay kicked a stupid field goal late that made no difference on the game other than screwing up the spread. Giants -4. We'll talk about the Cardinals later, but there's some shady stuff going on with the Cardinals. And the Giants suck. Cowboys -9. Easiest win of the week. Easiest win of all time. Commanders +3.5 against the Broncos. Broncos stink. That was an easy win. Dolphins -3. Easy win again against the Patriots. Saints -3. Push on a late, stupid, just perfectly just to kill gamblers, where it was just perfect. Saints knew they were winning the game. There was no need to play any kind of aggressive, crazy defense. Let the Carolina Panthers drive down, score with less than a minute left, and there's no chance for them to win the game. So just only made it for a push. And the Browns -2.5. I thought I shouldn't have zigzagged on the Steelers. My opinion on the Steelers should have changed. I should have stayed with the Steelers, where I think Tomlin's going to find ways to grind out games, especially home games where they're an underdog. Should have stuck with my gut and the way I usually think about the Steelers there. But still, 9-5-1. That's not a bad pick record. Overall, if you're trying to go 60, 65%, that's right on the money for last week. But let's pull up this week's odds. Let's see what we got for this week. Let me look and see if I've got anything that I've already locked in for this week. Sunday. Okay, so 2 things I've already locked in because apparently there's going to be a tropical storm hitting right into like the DMV, Washington, Maryland, Delaware, Virginia area. This might come back to bite me. I went ahead and locked in under 44 for Ravens and Colts because Richardson's out. Could be low scoring game anyway, but if there's like a torrential downpour from a tropical storm, even better. Washington, Buffalo, under 43.5. That one's a little scary because Buffalo can definitely put up points, but if it's a torrential downpour, once again, these are just storm picks. These aren't good picks. These are purely I saw there was going to be a storm, and I jumped in these picks. Might be stupid. Who's your college team again? Sadly, my college team is the Vanderbilt Commodores. Born and raised in Nashville, was always raised to root for the home team, so we've spent a long time grinding out horrible, tragic Vandy games. That game last week, Vandy, I don't know how many people actually would have watched it, but last week, Vandy UNLV last week was maybe one of the most Vandy games I've seen in a very long time. Vandy's been bad, but they haven't had like a Vandy game, and Vandy fans will know what I mean by that. But last week, that was the most Vandy game we've seen in quite a long time. And Tornado says, same anchor down. Yeah, you're right there with me. We've been grinding this out, man. It's not been easy. It's not been easy being a Vandy fan over the years. All right, let's go through NFL slate for this week, week 3. All right, so we got Broncos, Dolphins. Dolphins, 6.5-point favorite here. I mean, Dolphins by 6.5 feels easy. I feel like this is going to be the game where, Russell Wilson's continued to look terrible. Like the idea that Sean Payton might be able to come in and fix him looks like it's not going to happen. Is this the last dance for Russell Wilson at Miami? I'd go Dolphins 6.5. But that's also one of those ones that's like, this is weird. Dolphins have been one of the better looking teams in the league. Broncos have been borderline terrible. Shouldn't this be like 7.5? Maybe even like 8? So it's almost like a little fishy, a little suspicious, but I'm a sucker for a square line, so I would go Dolphins -6. We've got next up Titans, Browns. Tornado here in the chat said he had it at Titans +3. It's moved. I don't know if it's moved or where it's been, but it's Titans +3.5 right now. I don't bet Titans just because I hate betting on my own teams just because it feels like it's just like asking for trouble, but +3.5, that feels weird. Especially after the Chubb injury, especially after we beat the Chargers, who, on paper, I think a lot of people would put the Chargers ahead of the Browns. And it's not like Cleveland's like some crazy, like, mega road trip. It's like 5-6 hours up the road from us. One thing I didn't mention earlier is like there's a lot of interesting like crossover between the two teams right now. Jim Schwartz is the defensive coordinator for the Browns right now. Defensive coordinator for the Titans for years, back in the early days of the Titans, like some of the best years in like the late 90s, or not late 90s, like kind of right after the Super Bowl era. Jim Schwartz was kind of our main defensive guy. Came back with Vrabel, was like a defensive consultant. Got a lot of credit for helping Shane Bowen, helping our other defensive coordinators kind of formulate their stuff. And he's at Cleveland now as a defensive coordinator, so you give them a little inside info. But we've also got Tim Kelly, who was the offensive coordinator in Deshaun Watson's best years for Houston. So we've got DeAndre Hopkins, who knows a lot about Deshaun Watson. A lot of crossover between these two teams, but 3.5 seems weird. Seems really weird. Like, I think they're wanting people to bet Titans there because they're wanting people to go, oh, Nick Chubb's out. The Titans are going to win this game easily. Like I said, whenever things seem to be going the Titans' way, that's always when things go the other way. So I feel like this is a trap game. And maybe I'm just always going to be a pessimist when it comes to the Titans, but I feel like this is a trap game. I feel like this is a trap line. I'm going to go Browns -3.5 because now that I'm looking at that, I'm like, this might be 21. Well, I'm trying to figure out what number would be right. So I was going to say 2017 Browns, which would be a cover for the Titans. Vegas is so much smarter than all of us. They've put this at the exact spot where I'm like, I think the Browns are going to win this game. But then I'm like, but only by 3. But then I'm like, no, I don't want to take the Titans +3.5. I don't trust the Titans game. This feels like the trap game where like everything's going our way, so something has to go wrong. So we lose this game 20-10 somehow. I don't know what happens. Somehow we lose this game 20-10. I'm taking Browns -3.5. Bills, Commanders. Commanders, I mean, have been good. Sam Howell, like, looks pretty good. Like, they haven't played anybody good yet. They played the Broncos and the Cardinals. They've had, like, maybe the easiest 2 games you could have to start the season. Bills looked to get right last week, but it was against the Raiders, who are also terrible. So there's not a lot to really gauge where these teams are at right now. I did say, like I said, I took this. It's all right. I took this at 43. What did I say I had it at? I got it at 43.5. It's already dropped half a point. It's down to 43. So storms are moving in my favor, apparently, with that. So, I mean, if it's going to be an under, if it's going to be a struggle for teams to score points, can the Bills score enough to win by 7? Because it's -6.5 to the Bills. Commanders got a good defense. I like the Bills. I'm a big Josh Allen fan. I think, like, he's hopefully like figured stuff out from the week before. I'm gonna go Commanders 6.5 just because I've already bet the under in this game, thinking that the weather is going to affect the game. So if that's the case, if it's going to be an under game, if it's going to be a low scoring game, my brain tells me I still think the Bills win, but the combination of the Commanders having a good defense and it being a low scoring game, they don't win by much. 24-20, which would put it over. God, I'm terrible at this. I am terrible at this. Do not bet anything I tell you to bet right now, because I literally just said I'm on the under, and I gave a score line that would be the over. So, yeah, but I'm going to go Commanders. Just I think it'll be low scoring. So if it's low scoring, the Bills can't win by 7 unless they win like 14-0. Terrible. Oh, man. Texans, Jaguars. All right, so Texans +8. Texans +8. Jaguars -8. It's at Jacksonville. This is a tough one. I don't think the Texans are very good, but Stroud has looked very good. And I've never, there's bias involved, obviously, but I've never bought the Jaguars hype. They couldn't do anything offensively against the Chiefs, which, I mean, the Chiefs are struggling now. So if the Jaguars are supposed to be good, if they're supposed to be like a contender for the Super Bowl, if they're supposed to be like one of the best teams in the league, and they couldn't get anything going against the Chiefs, I don't know. This one sucks. This might be the worst game of the day. I'm probably going to say it on like 15 different games today, but man. That's the thing. Is like you wouldn't expect the Texans to be that good because they have not been that good, but Stroud's been perfectly fine. He's been the best of the rookie quarterback so far. But if the Jaguars showed you anything that makes you think they're really going to be able to beat them by 8, I mean, the Colts did just beat the crap out of the Texans. I would go Jaguars by 8. Yeah. Don't overthink it. Texans aren't very good. Jaguars are fine. Falcons, Lions. This is one where it's interesting. Like, I have been not on the Lions train. Like, a lot of people like got hyped on the Lions this season, said that, they're thinking Lions might be the team. They've been one of the sexy darlings. Like, oh, look how good they finished the season last year. It's finally the Lions back. We love Dan Campbell. He's such a fun coach. We like him. We're going to like support him and back him. And like I said earlier when I was talking about last week's game with the Falcons, I kind of think they're a little bit Titans light. I think Arthur Smith has a little bit of that same thing Mike Vrabel has, where he's going to know how to always keep his team in games. And he's always going to like keep it close. If it was plus 3.5, I would jump all over the Falcons. Because I think plus 3, there's push potential there because it could easily be like a 27-24 game. I'd go Falcons. Just like I said, I like them as like a Titans light team where they're going to grind it out. They're going to keep themselves in every game as much as humanly possible and just grind out games and keep games tight. And I'm not fully bought into the Lions like a lot of people are. So I'll go Falcons there. Colts, Ravens. Ravens -8. All right, so we got Anthony Richardson out. Gardner Minshew's in. I don't know how much of a drop-off that is, though, because Gardner Minshew, he's a dude. He comes in, he slings it. He's never looked terrible. He's never looked like completely incompetent. He's not a guy you want starting 17 games for you, but like I would absolutely take him as the Titans backup if that was an option right now. And I'm going to use the same principle here that I had in the Washington-Buffalo game. I've taken the under in this game because of the potential weather implications. So if it's going to be a low-scoring game, it's going to be hard for the Ravens to win by 8. They're a -8 favorite. So if the game's low-scoring, it's going to be hard for them to win by 8 unless they just shut out the Colts, which is possible. But, the Colts have put up points so far this season. And Minshew, like I said, I don't know that he's, at this point, that significant of a drop-off from Minshew to Richardson. I think he can help them keep it close. So I hate the Colts. But I got to go +8 because it just feels like in a game that's going to be low-scoring because of weird weather conditions, feels too tight. All right, this is next up, Chargers, Vikings. It's basically a pick 'em. I'm going Vikings. -1 because I think Brandon Staley is dead man walking as coach of the Chargers. Like the fact that they lost the game against the Titans has to be 100% on his shoulders. Like I've been very critical of Justin Herbert, more so than most people, but I think some of that is just like a negative reaction to like the overhype he gets. Like he's celebrated on the same level that like Joe Herbert and like Patrick, or like people in the same classes like Josh Allen, brain died. He seems to get talked about in the same class as Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes. Like he's one of the top elite quarterbacks in the league, and it's like he hasn't done anything outside of like some like decent statistical performances. This podcast I was listening to actually was talking about this. They're like, he's never really shown that killer instinct and just gone for it. And somebody like tweeted at the people that host the podcast, like, do you know that Joe Herbert is like 10 out of 20 and fourth quarter comeback attempts, which is like, wait a minute, he's only 50% in like comeback attempts. Like you're proving the own point here. So I was like, that made me interesting because I think it's more interesting to look at rather than total comebacks the quarterback's made. Because like Ryan Tannehill is like weirdly like high on like list of like fourth quarter comebacks, but I think that's because like he's been on like a lot of bad teams that need to make fourth quarter comebacks. So I was like, look at Justin Herbert's like comebacks, and he's got 13 game-winning drives. So I looked it up. This is from Pro Football Reference. And I don't know why I'm suddenly just going to be the Justin Herbert hatred show, but that's what it is. And these are the teams that he's led game-winning drives against. 2020, Atlanta. 2020, Raiders. 2020, Denver. 2021, Washington. 2021, Kansas City. Credit. That's impressive. 2021, Cleveland. 2021, Philadelphia. Somewhat impressive. 2021, Pittsburgh. 2022, Cleveland. 2022, Denver. 2022, Atlanta. 2022, Arizona. 2022, Tennessee. So out of his 13 game-winning drives he's got in his career, there's maybe 2 that was against actually good teams. So, I mean, that's not that impressive. And also, this probably speaks more to the Chargers overall. He's only started 51 games, so he's had 20 games that he needed to come from behind in and 51 starts. That probably speaks more to the overall issues with the Chargers. Like I said, would I trade Ryan Tannehill for Justin Herbert right now? In a heartbeat. He's got all the tools. He's got all the ability in the world. Like I do think there is a little something missing with him. Like I can't, put my fingerprint on it, but I always feel like he's got a little similar vibe to Mariota that we had here in Tennessee, where he just does not have that killer instinct, does not have that extra competitive edge, that extra motivation, just go for the kill. And I also think their coach is an idiot and their coach sucks. So I go Vikings -1 because I think the Vikings coach is okay. I think Kirk Cousins gets more hate than he probably deserves, and this is not a primetime game for Kirk Cousins, and he thrives when it's not primetime. It's in Minnesota. I'm going Minnesota -1 here. Jets, Patriots. So here's the thing. Patriots have won 14 in a row against the Jets, which is absolutely insane. I think the Titans at one point in time had lost like 11 in a row to the Colts. Like, we never beat Andrew Luck as a starter or something crazy like that. And but it still wasn't 14. So here's what you have to think. The Patriots are 0-2. Jets are 1-1. The only way you can't take the Patriots here is if you really think the wheels have fully fallen off of what's left of the Patriots dynasty. Like, is Bill Belichick just completely lost it without Tom Brady? Is Mac Jones a lost cause? They've got a good defense, but if you don't think that's good enough to carry them, you go here. Here's what I come back to. Everybody loves the Jets roster. The Jets have this incredible roster. They're so good. They're so good. All they needed to do is have Zach Wilson be just passable and not be an idiot. Well, they couldn't do that last week against the Cowboys. He was terrible. They got their best player, Breece Hall, like 4 touches. And that reminded me. Something that got kind of glossed over because everybody's just like, oh, Aaron Rodgers is coming. He's a savior. Todd Downing is a coach for the New York Jets. Nathaniel Hackett is a coach for the New York Jets. 2 of the dumbest offensive minds in the 2022 season in the NFL are now trying to figure out how to get one of the worst quarterbacks in the 2022 season, Zach Wilson, how to not lose games with him as their quarterback. That's a bad recipe for me. Patriots, 14 in a row. Belichick, mad scientist. 2 dummies leading the offense. Terrible quarterback. It's almost crazy that it's only a 2.5-point favorite for Patriots. Has to be Patriots 2.5. Saints, Packers -1. This is a pick 'em. I think the Saints look like a team that's not that great. And I think the Packers are sneaky good. So don't need much other analysis there. I think Derek Carr is still not great. Packers -1 because it looks like the Packers are getting healthy too. They're getting Watson back, maybe Aaron Jones back. Packers -1. Panthers, Seahawks. I think the Panthers stink. Bryce Young's out. I don't think he was going to get them anywhere anyway. Seahawks kind of got right a little bit last week. I'm going to go Seahawks -5.5. That's easy. Cowboys, Cardinals. It's -12.5. The Cardinals are kind of doing that thing where they're like, we have to be just competitive enough to make you think we're not tanking. Like, they went up 28-0 on the Giants last week. And not just it wasn't like a fluky 28-0. They look good. Josh Dobbs looked like a stud. And then they just somehow all of a sudden we're stopped playing football in the second half. It was bizarre. Tell me you're not tanking without telling me you're tanking. The defense is good. Their offense looked kind of good for half until maybe they decided to start tanking. I don't know. They might have put up the best fight they had in 2 weeks. Now they just give up after flopping in 2 straight games. I'm going to go Cowboys 12.5 there because Cowboys have looked great. Although Diggs is out, Does Diggs being out help them? I don't know. Bears Chiefs. This one's interesting because the Bears have been one of the biggest disasters in football this past week. Like the craziness that's been going on there. The Justin Fields part of it got a little blown out of proportion because like he was trying to explain why he thinks he hasn't been playing his best football, and people perceived it. He said coaching, and people kind of just used that one clip and said like he was blaming the coaches. But I think what he was trying to say was, and he tried to clarify this is the same point, is that like he feels like he's trying to take on too much information. He's getting overloaded with information, and that he's at his best when he just kind of lets the game play, just kind of goes with it, which I'm a big Justin Fields guy. I wanted the Titans to get him. If the Bears somehow decide he's not the guy and he's on the market, I wouldn't be minding if the Titans went and traded for him this offseason. He's very similar in my mind to Baker Mayfield, where he had this one incredible game at Ohio State in the college football playoff, and I'm just locked in forever that I think he's a stud, and I'll never give up on that till he's out of the league and retired for 50 years. So I think he's still got a chance to be there. I think just like their coaching there is just a disaster. The whole organization around him is a disaster. So obviously they have the situation. I don't know if you don't follow this. They lost their defensive coordinator. He's resigned for family and medical reasons. But there was also reports that his home and maybe even the Bears facility was raided by the FBI. They've come out and said that they've since denied and since said that the Bears facility was not. There's been some denials that his home was not, but I don't know if that's ever been officially confirmed that his home was not. It's a very bizarre circumstance, a very bizarre situation. Then today, overnight, $100,000 worth of landscaping equipment was stolen from Soldier Field overnight. Just a weird, bizarre week for the Bears, just like a crazy week for the Bears. And now they have to play the Chiefs. So this is what's interesting. In situations like this, do the Bears collapse? Does all this craziness that's going on around them, is this just like the unraveling of the team and everything falls apart and they just completely come unglued for the rest of the season? Or do they circle the wagons? That's a Bills thing. Rally the troops. Is everybody like gung-ho? The world's against us. We got to fight back together and we got to come back strong. Not a good time to be doing that when you're playing the Chiefs. But the Chiefs, have not been convincing, especially on offense. So it's like, do you really think the Chiefs can beat them by 12.5 points? Because the Chiefs have had very weak offensive production. I mean, they only scored 17 against the Jaguars. They only scored 20 against the Lions. So to beat the Bears by 12.5, either the Bears have to score no points or the Chiefs have to score a lot more than they've scored so far. Like I said, yeah, good point, Richard. Saying here in the chat, 12.5 points. It's a lot of points. And maybe this is where the Chiefs come to life and they just make me look like an idiot, but their offense has not looked good enough to me for me to be able to say they're going to beat anybody by 12.5 points. And I like Justin Fields. Like I said, I'm a Justin Fields fan. I think he's got something to him. I think if the Bears could just figure some things out. I mean, they got DJ Moore. They got another. Is it Mooney? Is Mooney the other receiver they got that's pretty good? They've got some weapons. They've got Cole Kmet. They've got a good tight end. They've got some good running backs. They have the stuff there if they can just figure out how to use Justin Fields to the best of his ability, not try to make him into something he's not. Like, that's one of the things I thought the Titans didn't do very well with Marcus Mariota. I don't think Marcus Mariota was ever going to be in it. We've seen this, the way he's kind of petered out in the later part of his career, but he was never going to be like an elite level quarterback. But he had tools that if you built an offense around him and his strengths, it could have been more successful than it was. But I think the people we had here at the time, Wisenhunt and then Malarkey, were just determined to try to make Mariota play their style of play. And can the Bears adjust? Can they like open things up and like figure out how to best use Justin Fields' strength? They kind of did at some points last year. It's a lot of points. I'm going to take the Bears 12.5. It's going to seem crazy when the Chiefs win that game 38-10. But right now, just like off what we've seen so far this season, I don't think I see the Chiefs, scoring enough because their offense has not looked as good as the Chiefs offense usually looks. So I don't see them scoring enough to win by 12.5. Steelers, Raiders, Steelers plus 2.5. I'm going to go back to my thought. Steelers are not a great team, but they got Mike Tomlin. They came out, rebounded, got a good win against the Browns. The Raiders got demolished by the Bills. It's in Vegas, but I'm going Steelers. I'm not going to overcomplicate this. I'm going to go Steelers just because they're a team I liked preseason. I kind of went away from last season. It bit me, so I'm going to go back to them this week. We're going to go Steelers plus 2.5. Eagles -5. Bucks +5. All right, so this is where we come into a little bit of complication because, like I've said, I've been very high on the Bucks. I like them. I like Baker to be better than what people think they are because I think Baker is still a good quarterback, stuck on some performances he had early in his career, particularly against the Titans when he just came in and destroyed us. Eagles haven't looked great, but they've just won comfortably. They haven't had the toughest opponents. So New England, looks like they might not be good. Minnesota looks like they might not be good. I mean, Philadelphia's 2-0, but both the teams they beat are 0-2. They got to go to Tampa Bay -5. I got to stick with what's worked for me. So I got to stick with my takes from the season. I don't think the Bucks win this game, but I think they can keep it close. So I'm going to take Bucks +5. Rams and Bengals. This one's hard to pick because the Rams have looked like not as good as they were Super Bowl year, but they've looked like they've rebounded a little bit. They've looked better than they did last season. The Bengals are 0-2 and have looked terrible. Joe Burrow has, re-aggravated his calf strain. He's practiced this week, so I would assume he's going to play. Super Bowl rematch. It's one of the quietest Super Bowl rematches we've seen forever. I haven't even heard anybody talk about this game, but it's that's a Super Bowl rematch from just a year ago. I'm going to say the Bengals have to get right. So this is kind of just a get right game. This is just, if they don't get right here, I don't know that the Bengals get right this season. So I trust the Bengals. They've been a boogeyman for the Titans. And I want them, if they're going to get right here, I'd rather them get right here than save it because they play the Titans next week. So if they're going to have their big bounce back, get right game, I'd rather them have it in this game and then maybe have a come back down to earth game next week against the Titans. So in that regard, I'm going to pick the Bengals 2.5. Get right against Rams. Get all your aggression and all your rage for the poor start you've had in the season out here. Then have a come back down to earth moment next week against the Titans. Bengals -2.5. That's the Monday Night Football game. We went through the whole slate. All right, so let's recap. Let's go back through. Here's what I got. Dolphins -6.5 against the Broncos. Browns -3.5 against the Titans. Commanders +6.5 against the Bills. I'm reading through this and I hate every pick. Jaguars -8 against the Texans. Falcons +3 against the Lions. Colts +8 against the Ravens. Vikings -1 against the Chargers. Patriots -2.5 against the Jets. Packers -1 against the Saints. Seahawks -5.5 against the Panthers. Cowboys -12.5 against the Cardinals. Bears +12.5 against the Chiefs. Steelers +2.5 against the Raiders. That's a terrible Sunday night game. I didn't realize that was a Sunday night game when I was kind of reading through it, but that's based on what I've seen from those two teams so far this season, that's going to be an abysmal Sunday night game to watch. And then a Monday Night Football doubleheader again. Oh, I didn't realize that. That's cool. Doubleheader again. Bucks +5 against the Eagles. Bengals -2.5 against the Rams. Woo! A lot of fun stuff going on this weekend. Going to be a really fun sports weekend. It's one of those weekends where there's so many good games. Like I said, I'm not optimistic for what Vandy's going to do against Kentucky. I'm not optimistic about what Nashville SC is going to be able to do against San Jose. I'm not optimistic about what United's going to be able to do against Burnley. Not optimistic about what the Titans are going to do against the Browns. Nashville SC versus San Jose is maybe my biggest hope spot. But there's so many other good games. There's so much any entertaining stuff that's going to be going on between college football, soccer, NFL. It's going to be a fun weekend to watch sports. So if my teams lose every game, it's going to be devastating, but at least there'll be a lot of fun other stuff to watch while we're out there. So I'm going to wrap it up on that note. Thanks for watching as always. We'll have more to come on the channel. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe and turn the bell on for notifications so you never miss any updates, including when we go live. Been doing a little bit of extra live stuff with some of the watch-alongs and stuff like that. So keep an eye out for more of that stuff coming up on the channel. But Thanks for watching. Thanks for those of you that were in the chat commenting along as we went. Thanks for those of you that are watching this on replay. Thanks to anybody who watches anything that I ever do. I appreciate you, and we will see you in the next one.